Welcome in to GoJo and Golic. I am Mike Golic Sr. GoJo not here this morning. Claudia Bellafato hanging out in Boston in the DraftKings studios with us. And filling in for my son would be one Jason Fitz of Yahoo Sports. He's a Yahoo Sports host / analyst, adding that to his title. Also Fox Sports Radio host as well. So he will be joining today. We appreciate anybody checking us out on the DraftKings Network. Also, best of GoJo and Golic for an hour from noon to 1, wherever you catch VSiN Radio. And if you want to get us wherever you get your podcasts, subscribe, rate, review, give us that great review. We appreciate it. If you don't, we don't want to know about it. So let's try and keep it all positive. That's the way we like it. I got a great show for you today as we head into the weekend. We got another wonderful sport starting their playoffs this weekend. Claudia, what do we got on tap for this morning?
Well, Senior, before we get to that, I just have to say how disappointed I am that GoJo's not here, because I listened to some of that T-Swift album, which I know we're going to get into, but the fact that he's not here pains my soul. We are going to talk some NBA, though, of course, because 8 is enough. 2 final seeds up for grabs tonight in the NBA. And how about some draft drama, quarterback group visits, and potential blockbuster trades? And let's do that hockey. Sara Civian joins us for a playoff preview, Senior. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, it is. We got a ton going on, get a ton of information out there, have some fun as well. But Fitz, and for those that may not know Jason and I and my son Mike, quite honestly, have all worked together for years at ESPN. We've been teammates a long time. And while I said Jason is a slashy at Yahoo Sports, being a host and an analyst, also a slashy in his career. He was in the sports media now, been doing it for years. But you know, in kind of relation to the Taylor Swift thing, he was the fiddle player in the band Perry. He was also the band director for the band Perry as well. So he has spent years in the music industry. And Fitz, I've always told Mike, or I told everybody, you and Mike, or Mike and I and you would have discussions about the music world. And it was always fascinating when you would take us inside. So first off, thanks for jumping in on the show. But second, we know the greatness now of Taylor Swift. So go back to your years before we get into sports, when you were in the music industry, Tortured Poets Department. She released 17 songs last night at midnight. And then, oh, by the way, 2 hours later at 2 a.m., she released 17 more songs. So a double album. She is it right now. Kind of compare that, Jason, to when you were in this industry and just what she means to it now.
Well, look, first and foremost, a shout out to my buddy Matt, Taylor's drummer, one of my best friends out there on this. And Matt and I, so Matt doesn't really like to sit down and do coffee. He likes to go for hikes. So before the last leg of the tour, we went on a hike on our walk Wednesday. And I told him, dude, you're the drummer on the Michael Jackson of this generation. Love it or hate it, no matter what anybody thinks of the music, the way people fawn to the stadium, the way people stand outside just to listen to sound check, the fact that she has to fake where she's going and book multiple hotels because you can't be in any one spot. You got to worry about people being everywhere. Like, it's bigger than a music. It's a cultural phenomenon. But Mike, this is sort of in the weeds, but like the interesting thing that you pointed out is what, 17 songs and 17, correct my math here, that's 34, I think. The biggest difference in the streaming world versus the record world, like, because look, my last show with the band Perry was in 2016, so it's not like it's that long ago, but in that amount of time, streaming is taking over everything. So it used to be you would record songs, you turn them into your record label will decide which one should and shouldn't be released. You get through this big argument and you'd end up with like the best 12. And then every once in a while, 2 or 3 extra songs would make the like extra, like when we were younger, Mike, you could go out and get like extended editions of records and things like that. That was a special thing. But this mirrors a little of what we saw with Beyonce. I personally think 34 songs at once, it's too much. Like there is some quality in being edited. Like if you got 34 songs, you probably only have 17 that should have made a record. Like I know everybody's going to say it's perfect, all these things, but like to me, you space these things out, you edit yourself. It's easier than ever to put out music right now, which is beautiful and glorious, and I love it as a musician. But also, I think there was a process even 5-6 years ago of editing that happened. 34 songs is a lot for me. I don't know that I could listen to 34 in one setting, no matter who the artist is, no matter how much you like it.
Thank you.
Claudia, your thoughts on that?
So I'm not the only one. I just wanted to say, everybody keeps giving me like backlash for giving the album backlash. She is so talented. Like, trust me, to be able to have the following that she does is amazing. So much respect to her. She has some absolute bangers that I used to cry to and jam out when I was younger. My issue though is the reason that people don't like baseball is there are too many damn games. The reason people love football is that we always want more. We're always waiting for the small amount of games. So I agree with you, Fitz. I think she probably should have just released this one album. Everybody would have been happy with it. Even wait a month later, people would have jumped at it. They're gonna love what she does regardless, but I just don't understand that tactic, and also really just the fandom to the level that it's at scares me a little bit. I'm not going to get much further into that because I'm not going to disrespect the album.
You are scared. You are scared of Swifties. That's you are fear.
I am so scared. No, like I'm scared. So that's where I'm going to end it. She's great. Everybody enjoy the album.
Yeah. It's like you don't want to say anything about Beyonce either. You don't want that beehive coming after you. But I think, and we'll get more into this album a little later, a little more of a breakdown. But one thing I think is the last thing you said, Claudia, changes everything. She has so many fans that they're going to grab whatever she does. Mm-hmm. So while Fitz, you gave what you thought, and I think that's kind of the industry thought, she's above all that. There are some that are just greater than the rules, right? She can get away with 34 songs because it's going to be downloaded by millions and millions and millions of people, including my son, who, Mike, as you mentioned, Claudia, not here this morning. He's actually at Chris Long's charity golf tournament in Charlottesville, Virginia, so doing a very cool thing. And I got a note about that. That's unbelievable because Jason Kelsey is there. But Mike's text last night at the 2 a.m. part, because at the midnight, you had the 17-song release, and then 2 a.m., I mentioned another 17 songs. Mike's first line, I'm going to throw up. I mean, my God, the dude is Mike, such a Swiftie.
Look, the drama.
Just two things. Number one, from my age, I remember when Guns N' Roses put out Use Your Illusion Volume 1 and Volume 2 at the same time. And I remember even then, as a kid, listening to these 2 records thinking, look, this is great, but I wish they just made 1 great record instead of 2 pretty good records. That's point number 1. And point number 2, I will say this as gently as I can because let's face it, we like being employed. You can do the hibbity-dibbity and a day later you want to do the hibbity-dibbity again. But if you're doing the hibbity-dibbity and it goes for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, eventually you're even tired of doing the hibbity-dibbity, right? Like you need a break. 17 songs, give me a break, give me 17 more. And I mean more than an hour and a half. I need like days, weeks, months, like I just needed a break. I needed a hibbity-dibbity break. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all right. All I'm going to say as we get turned to football or turn to basketball is if you can do the hibbity-dibbity-dibbity-dibbity for hours, you're going to get a contract to make movies, and you don't have to worry about anything else. So, yeah.
Fitz, I don't even know how you said it that many times. From the hibbity-dibbity to the NBA playoffs. No one can say it wasn't a battle because several injuries, key injuries already and just in the play-in tournament. Jimmy Butler out for weeks with an MCL. Zion ruled out with the hamstring. So, of course, these are the last elimination. Then the actual NBA playoffs will start. The Heat are 1.5-point favorites at home against the Bulls. Pelicans plus 1.5, so home dogs against the Kings, again, without Zion. So the Heat still a slight favorite without Jimmy. And I know we've talked about this game, both games a little bit, Senior. So, Fitz, let me go to you first. Which team do you think is going to feel the loss a little bit more?
Well, I think realistically, I don't put any weight in the Heat being able to get anything done without Jimmy. But when you talk about feel the loss, it's got to be the Pelicans. And the reason the Pelicans feel the loss more to me is because, A, look at how good they were against the Lakers with Zion on the floor. But also, look at how well they played over the course of the last month and a half, Mike, right? Like, if you look at the course of how the Pelicans were playing versus where this season is likely to come crashing down, it has to feel like a disappointment because they played so well coming into it that you thought, man, if they could get into the playoffs instead of the play-in, maybe they'd have a chance. And then to have all of it end the way that everybody hates to have things end with Zion, yet another injury, that's why this feels like it's just sort of an epic disaster for the Pelicans. So they feel the loss more because of where they were, but also because of the way this is going to end up going down, where yet again, you got to look at it, say, even in a year where Zion was healthy, Zion's health is still an issue.
Yeah, and they have to play a better team in Sacramento than Miami does in Chicago. Chicago, 10 games or whatever they were, 8 games under 500. And look what Miami did against Philadelphia. Made that a 1-point game. And I know Jimmy Butler was in the game, but he wasn't really a factor. By the time he got hurt, Fitz, after that, he was 2 of 4, and then he went like 3 of 12 or 3 of 14 after that. So he wasn't a big factor in the game, yet that team was still in the game. Now, on the other side of that, we have to remember that the Pelicans, I believe, beat the Kings all 5 times this year.
Yep.
But without Zion, I do think it's going to be a tough road to climb. Either way, all these the winners will get the 1 seed. So the winners in the East are going to get Boston. The winners in the West are going to get Oklahoma City. There are those that wonder because whoever gets Oklahoma City, could this be a positive? And let's also bring back, as just a year ago, you don't got to go far back. Well, the play-in doesn't go too far back either. Miami was in this exact same position last year. Lost the 7-8 game, played in the 9-10 game, won that, got to be the 8th seed, and ended up in the finals. So they have just gone down this. This is like Fitz, the wild card team with the 9-7 record back when there were 16 games, like the Giants, making it all the way to the Super Bowl. So Miami's not going to do it this year. I'm just saying, it's a possibility to happen because Butler's going to be out for weeks. But do you give? Zion, let's throw Miami. Let's be realistic and throw Miami out of this if Jimmy Butler's going to be out for weeks.
But hold on.
Do you give the winner?
Quick, you want to just throw the Heat out? Because let's think about this, right? I see a reason why. I'm thinking that Colby White dropping 42 probably is baked into this line, and that's probably the reason that the Heat are slight favorites. Hero, we know that he can get off shooting. Adebayo, I think they have enough pieces up against a team where they're going to have DeRozan pop off, but you would think the defense will be able to adjust. They're not going to worry about Kobe White. I don't know. Maybe I'm being dramatic and I'm a little scarred because Celtics fan by this Heat squad, but I don't think we should just throw them out. I just don't.
I didn't specify that well enough. I didn't mean the game tonight. I meant them as an 8th seed if they win this game in beating Boston, the 1st seed. I said, let's throw them out for that. They're not beating Boston without Jimmy Butler.
Yeah.
So my question, Jason, is to Sacramento, I think Zion will be back quicker than Jimmy Butler. So if the Pelicans could pull this game off and they do have Zion, do either Sacramento or the Pelicans have a chance in your mind against OKC? Just because we're not used to seeing OKC in this position.
Yeah, so I want to say no, but I think that there's a better chance. Like, to your point, Mike, clearly all the Heat are doing is delaying the inevitable death. Right. I don't care what they did last year. This is a Celtics team that is far better than they were last year right now. This is a Heat team that is just banged up in every possible way and not as good. So if they end up taking on Boston, congratulations. All you did was survive the first fight to then get your butt kicked in the second one. To the Kings-Pelicans point, the Kings obviously have had a disappointing season for a lot of reasons. The Pelicans I'll go back to over the course of the last 2 months of the season have shown that when Zion is playing well and they have the sort of beef up front to handle things, I think they could at least make it interesting. I don't think either of those teams beat OKC, but I think the Pelicans could steal a couple of games, right? Like, so that gives us at least a more interesting series if Zion is back and if Zion's 100% and if Zion's healthy. I mean, just think about what we saw from Zion against the Lakers with everything on the line in that game, right? So I feel like there is some sort of proof here that the Pelicans can be disruptors, but I also think that that's a little disrespectful to OKC. I mean, at the end of the day, we are presuming the West is going to be this wild thing of unpredictability, and the East is just going to be dominant. So maybe that plays into the bias in my mindset on it. But I feel like the Pelicans could at least give a better challenge to Oklahoma City than the Heat could give to the Celtics, which is just going to be disgusting.
Well, again, what Oklahoma City did with the young team that they did to be number one has been impressive. Mike and I talked about this the other day. I want to get your thoughts on it before I ask a playoff question. Do you think the roster of the big three in Golden State, do you think that's over now that Klay Thompson is a free agent? They bring him back?
I think it should be over. That's the biggest thing to me, like the definition of insanity. I know we all want it to continue because we loved it before, but what it was before is not what it is now. I'm wearing everybody out with music analogies, but I use this one all the time. Like, I don't go see Guns N' Roses now because I don't want to see Fat Axl. Like, I don't need a lot of Axl Rose crammed into a little leather pants trying to work his way around on stage. He might have a good note here or there where you're like, yeah. And they might go out, they might kill every once in a while one good song. You're like, yeah. But for the most part, you're watching Fat Axl. That's what the Warriors are at this point. Like, it's past its prime. It was great in your childhood. Leave it where it was. Like, I don't want to go sit in the crowd and watch this version of Madonna writhing around on stage while she sings like a virgin. It doesn't work for me. Like, it's past, this is all past the point of watchability. That's where we are. Like, so what if the Warriors run it back? It's just not going to be what we want it to be anymore. So let's just let the damn thing go out to the field and be done.
Those are great analogies. So I have to ask then, before I ask you the playoff question, I have to ask, is there a group that has been touring now for 30, 40, 50 years that has gone back out on the road that you think is not as good as when they were young, but you're like, wow, they're not, Fat Axl or, an aging Madonna slithering on the floor. Is there a group that you think, wow, they're really good?
No, I think the Stones have meant, like, look, the way that the Stones have done it, I think you have to be a certain type of performer. Like Billy Joel, unquestionably, like, you'll still go see Billy Joel. Yeah. Doesn't matter. Like, I would still go see Elton John. Like, I think guys like that. But when you talk about running around on stage and entertaining, I think the Rolling Stones are that. Like, I would actually be super into seeing the Aerosmith farewell tour at this point. Like, I'm not sure how it'll sound, but at least those guys still have sort of that kick, that energy in them. So not everybody does, but yeah, I think some of those rock stars have it.
Wasn't a rock star group for us, but my wife and I went and saw America, and those guys are like 70, and they were phenomenal. I mean, they sounded like they were in their 30s, and they had great stories. It was very cool. It's cool when you get a situation like that. All right, our situation in the NBA, the playoffs now. After tonight, we'll have all our seeds. But do you see a first round, or what's your biggest first round upset if you have one?
I don't really have a first round upset. Look, okay, so here's the thing. In the East, yeah, I mean, I know everybody's trying to figure out some manufactured way that we're going to have some chaos. But if you look at it, I think we've disrespected a little bit of Oklahoma City because of their age. I think we've just realized we've forgotten the fact that the Nuggets have been in cruise control for the majority of the season, right? So, like, the Nuggets don't really have to press because they know when they need to press, and they're still as good as they are. So I have a hard time betting against the Nuggets in this process. Like I said earlier, I absolutely am not going to bet against the Celtics. So I guess if we think that, seeing a team like the Knicks lose, like, feels like it's a little bit of an upset, there could be some chaos in the East maybe, but I don't know. It's just all sorts of feels like, for the most part, a lot of these teams that we were talking about on the last day of the season, oh my God, the seeding is in a wild situation. What was it? 11 of 15 games had playoff seeding implications going into the final day of the NBA season. So I have a hard time calling it an upset when one game could have made a difference between being a 2 seed or a 4 seed. And, we end up with weird situations where Cleveland ends up where they are. So I think a lot of this has just been jam-packed. I think it'll be an exciting series, but our heavy favorites going in are heavy favorites for a reason this year. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going to call, I think a couple. By seeding, I mean, I get what you're saying about how close everything is, but I'm going by seedings. Just like in the NCAA tournament, I don't really consider an 8-9 that, just like I probably wouldn't do that in a 4-5, and the 2 4-5s are what Cleveland and Orlando and the Clippers and the Mavericks. But I do think either the 2 or the 3 in the East are going to lose. I think Philadelphia, as long as Embiid can, though he looked like he was sucking a lot of wind playing 38 minutes, that one may be tough depending on his health. Unbeating the Knicks, who are a hot team right now. But Milwaukee, they've never gotten it together. They've never gotten the continuity with their big 3 there. Now Giannis is hurt, and the Pacers have beaten them, 4 times this year. So I think either the Knicks and the Bucks or one of those teams is going to lose.
The Bucks one is interesting because, let's face it, their defense has been absolute trash all year long. And I think the Bucks, we talked about the expectations for the Warriors. The expectations for the Bucks have been just grossly underwhelming compared to what we expected. Coming up, though, we got group projects to get into in the NFL draft coming up next.
Of a quarterback party. Instead of just hosting a quarterback at a time, they decided to bring Jaden Daniels, Drake May, JJ McCarthy, and skip over a few to Michael Penix Jr. all at the same time, sort of Tuesday, Wednesday. In addition, overall, it was like a 30-dude sleepover pretty much, and they were getting a lot of backlash for this tactic. Sort of weird, but GM Adam Peters says it's all good, man.
with all these guys, they all know each other really well. And so what was cool is while we got to see them all together in a group setting at the Topgolf, which was really fun, and I think everybody had a great time, and it was very beneficial to see everybody in a more relaxed environment. They all got a lot of time individually with their coaches, with us, where they were staggered coming in too. So it wasn't like they were sitting in a room together. They all had their own individual time with everybody. So it worked out really well. And then you got a great blend of that, and then working everybody together, in a fun environment.
Topgolf sounds fun, Senior. What do you think of this strategy?
Well, first off, I know we're very good friends with a guy. When Topgolf started, he was asked to be one of the initial investors, and he thought it was a bad idea and didn't do it. Anytime I pass a Topgolf, I text him and I say, "Parking lot's full."
Send a selfie.
First off, that is a fun place to go. I love that place. I think it's fantastic. But to me, Fitz, I mean, and Peters, when he was with the 49ers, said they did this before, so he is used to this. Others have said they've never really seen it done this way. To me, it would almost feel like a Bachelor or Bachelorette episode when you have, right in the beginning, when you have so many people, right? You're gonna sit around, you're gonna say, as you heard them there, everybody got their one-on-one time. Did they? Did everybody? You're gonna be like, I didn't get as much time as him. Am I getting one-on-one time? How much time do he get? We got to see this guy. Who do I get to see? Do I get to see the assistant coach or the head coach? Who am I getting to visit? I think it would be unbelievably hectic to try and see if you're accomplishing anything doing this.
Yeah, maybe, but I love it. So first thing I thought of was the same thing. Like, I want them all in the room at once. I want them in a conference room. I come in with the rose, and I'm like, only one of y'all's getting this, and it's an expensive rose, right? Like, let's just narrow it down to that. But also, for everybody that's freaking out about this, two things. I think it's a smart point that, look, people know where the visits are going to be anyway, so who cares? But two, if you're thinking of taking a quarterback at number 2 overall, and you have to worry about whether or not it hurts his feelings to see the other quarterbacks in the room that are being interviewed, you might not have the right quarterback. Like, this better than any of us as a former player. But one thing we hear about a lot in the draft process is teams like to make you uncomfortable, because when they make you uncomfortable, they get a better sense of who you are in those moments, and that you sort of knocks off some of the armor. We see that in interviews. Like, the reason I did an interview with Max Crosby where I got a tattoo is because we both got tattoos. While you're getting tattoos, like, it knocks off some of the finish on a quarterback. So if you can make a quarterback uncomfortable in the room, you get a better version of them. This actually, I think, is a really smart strategy. Hey, let's knock all of the walls down. Let's get real answers from guys. And if they're uncomfortable or they're soft or their ego's hurt because somebody else is there, like, who gives a damn? Like, this is such a small part of the analysis. I don't know, Mike, why people are freaking out about it.
I am so with you on when we would talk about young quarterbacks or young players, but it's mostly young quarterbacks. Well, you don't want to do anything to affect their psyche. Well, I've said if this affects their psyche, I may not want them around. I'm not. At this point, I want you a little more mentally tough than that, whether it's something on the field or as you're talking about here. Maybe it's also they just wanted to it's like recruiting trips. They just wanted to do it all in one weekend, so they had the other times to, more time for themselves. They have said that they're not looking to move down. They're looking to make the pick at 2. I know it's lying season and all that, but I think everybody expects them to make that pick at 2. And, for a long time, Fitz, you obviously cover college football. It was Drake May, and then it changed to Jaden Daniels. Who do you think it's going to be, and who do you think it should be?
I think it should be Jaden Daniels. I think it's going to be Jaden Daniels, but I'll tell you this, like, one thing that Charles Robinson, the Yahoo NFL insider, has told me repeatedly is that there are people within that organization that even before lying season made it clear that they thought J.J. McCarthy was the best quarterback on the board. And I'm not saying I would take J.J. I'm saying that I've talked to enough people that think that there are real legs to J.J. at number 2. Doesn't make sense to me. I think this is a little bit of a crapshoot. I also don't understand why you're being so secretive. Like, we all know Caleb's going 1, and the team is saying clearly they're not interested in trading down. They're not interested in trading down. Then, like, you don't have to make this dog and pony show. Just, like, tell everybody what you want to do.
Plus, I always love when I hear when you hear the reports, the team's not even sure, and they may not be sure till draft day what they're going to do with that pick. BS. They know exactly what they're going to do with that pick. When you're picking that high, you know, if you're still deciding at this point, that may be an issue you have as opposed to who you're going to take. I think it's going to be Jaden Daniels as well. What an incredible player he is. I have said time and time again, I think Michael Penix, he's not getting drafted that high, but Michael Penix, who may be on your team, which we'll get into in the Raiders, I think he could end up being the best quarterback out of this draft. We'll get into that. But Claudia, we think the top 2 are set. But at number 3, again, it's lying season, but not shocking to see the Patriots open for business.
I want to talk about my Patriots. You know I want to talk about my Patriots getting better, knock on wood. But quickly, I do want to say, when you talked about Jaden Daniels, it sounds like it makes the most sense. The sportsbooks have him as the favorite to go number 2 overall at -130 at DraftKings. Interesting, though, with this whole conversation about the quarterback visit, Jaden Daniels' agent retweeted a video where Mike Florio was sort of criticizing the whole thing, and he did the thinking emoji. So that's very interesting. Senior, I want to get your quick take on that first. Are you going to read into that? Because I know you love social media. Or are you just going to throw that one out?
No, don't even bring me into that. Absolutely not.
Fitz,
I don't know what half the emojis mean or what they're used for. We still haven't. I can't believe in this day and age nobody has come up with a sarcasm emoji because nobody ever gets sarcasm on Twitter. So no, I'm not reading into anything because it's lying season. So I believe and see nothing.
Well, Fitz, listen, if you're Jaden Daniels too, and you're hearing everybody saying this is the spot you're supposed to go, then you're the bachelorette who thinks you're supposed to be getting the rose, right? And is this weird that his agent did it? It feels weird to me.
No, agents have one job, and that is to make their clients a ton of money. Like an agent, if Jaden had tweeted about it, then maybe I would feel some kind of way. But that's only Caleb likes to get into those Twitter fights. And by the way, getting in those Twitter fights isn't keeping Caleb out of the number 1 spot. So
yeah,
no, it's not. It's absolutely not.
All right.
I wonder.
Yeah, go ahead, Senior.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Claudia.
I was going to say, we can start Patriots and bring it into the next block unless you guys want to talk more about Daniels and Twitter drama and social media.
No. I definitely looking at the Patriots. I'm wondering, as you look at the Patriots talking about trading, Jason, if you think that's going to be the first team to trade, or all we hear is how Minnesota is going to jump up to 5 to take a quarterback. Do you think the Patriots start off this trade?
Well, look, I hope the Patriots start off the trade. I'm going to say this in a way that Claudia is not going to like to hear, but I think the Patriots have arguably one of the worst rosters in the NFL this year.
Oh, I know.
They're in complete rebuild mode. So knowing that they're in complete rebuild mode, the hard part is, what do they do when you can't really win in the modern NFL without a great quarterback, but also you put that great quarterback on this Patriots roster, that great quarterback is not going to be in a great situation for the first couple of years. I think if the Patriots decide that the right move is to trade, then they're going to get a king's ransom for that. The Vikings, and Field Yates, our friend at ESPN, tweeted out the other day that the Vikings' 2 first-rounders is not going to be enough to move up. It's going to take another first-rounder. I also had somebody at the Super Bowl tell me that the Raiders were very prepared to offer 3 first-rounders if it meant that they got to Jaden Daniels. So if the flavor of ice cream that a team loves is there at 3, I think the Patriots can get a king's ransom, Mike, 100%.
Boy, that's the big question. And I guess it comes down to, and I've always said this, if you don't have a quarterback rated that high, if Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels are going to be gone, and the next quarterback you have rated isn't of 3rd pick value, then you probably got to move down. Even though that's the position you've got to fill. That's a position you have to get it right. And we know they have not gotten it right since Tom Brady has left.
I know. In this vein, Mike, I'll ask you this when we come back, because there are a couple of scenarios here with the quarterback situation that could make all of this very complicated. We'll break it down as we continue to look at the quarterbacks in the NFL draft next. GoJo and Golic, DraftKings Network. All right, Mike, we were just talking about quarterbacks, and I have to get your thoughts on this. I'm Jason Fitz, by the way. If you're tuning in, I forgot to tell you that. Golic, we were just talking about possible trades, right, in this scenario, in this situation. Here's what's interesting to me about quarterbacks. Everybody has their own flavor of ice cream, right? And so what's going to happen is if a king's ransom, and I believe it would truly take a king's ransom to move up to 3, is offered to the Patriots, people are going to question it. But I go back to what the Bills GM said earlier this year, where, hey, if you trade everything and you get the guy, nobody's going to care. If you get it wrong, you're going to get fired. The interesting thing about this year is not every team agrees on who the guy is. So you said earlier, like, if you don't believe, you're the Patriots, you don't believe that the third best quarterback is right, then you should trade out. I believe there are teams that think Drake May is the best, that think Jaden Daniels is the best, and that changes the whole equation, because sometimes what we do when we're covering the draft is we apply one logic without realizing, like, if you're the Vikings, the Broncos, or the Raiders, and your number one guy is sitting there, who gives a damn what you give up to go get them? You have to go do that. And that's the part of the draft board that we can't know, right? Like, the Broncos may value somebody differently, so they may be prepared to overpay for the 5th pick, So that's why I feel like we have to throw the trade values out and really understand that whatever team moves up is moving up because they believe they can get their Mahomes.
1,000% agree. And listen, we've seen it backfire, right? We'd look at the 49ers when they moved up to 3 to take Trey Lance, gave up, a bunch of picks for that, and that didn't work out. But I agree with you. If you believe that's your quarterback, if you believe that's the guy, then you trade, because you don't go anywhere. Now, he doesn't have to be one of the greatest of all time, but you have to have a really, really, really good to great quarterback to win in this league. You just do. So if you believe it's that guy, hey, that's what you got the job for, is to break stuff down and bring in the people that are going to help you win. And it can be questionable at times. How many times, we were in Nashville doing the draft when the Giants draft Daniel Jones, we were all like, what the hell? And he gets a big payday, but I don't think his career is long with the Giants. He'll still be in the league, but I think they'll move on for it. But the Giants felt he was the guy. I go all the way back to, and I brought this up before, Jason, Ryan Tannehill, when he went 7 to the Dolphins, we were all like, wow, how is this happening? And I'll never forget Ron Jaworski on air saying, listen, it doesn't matter what we think. We can all have our own thoughts and break everything down, but it only matters what Miami thinks. Miami's grade of Tannehill was that. Now, sometimes teams have a grade and maybe reach a little for a quarterback because of the position, but you're 100% correct. If a team, that they'll all have different grades, and I've always said it comes down to what's that grade. If the grade isn't much of a difference, you can take either or, but if it is significant, then you will make a jump for that guy.
And keep in mind, I'll just plant this little seed for you. Adam Peters with the Commanders came from San Francisco. The quarterbacks that San Francisco had the most success with, Jimmy G, Brock Purdy. The one quarterback, not for any fault of anybody's, but the one quarterback they did not have success with, Trey Lance. What we don't know is what part of Peters' analysis went into any of those decisions. Because if you're looking at this year's quarterback class, it's pretty easy to see that Drake May, J.J. McCarthy stylistically are far closer to a guy like Jimmy G or a guy like Brock Purdy. And it's pretty easy to see that Jaden Daniels and the way he scrambles is pretty similar to Trey Lance, quarterback that Peters didn't have success with. So we'll just see. Let's see. We'll get into more draft process throughout the course of the show, obviously, because I love talking about this. It's like a drug. But Claudia, there's also college basketball news and notes out there that we need to break down.
Yeah, the one and done rule. So basically play a year in college and then go to the NBA is something that happens in men's college hoops. But in women's, that's not the case. And I think a big conversation we had this year was the fact that everybody was talking about college hoops for the first time in a while. So Gina Auriemma, UConn's women's head coach, is saying if we change this one and done rule and make it happen so that it can be a thing in women's college hoop, it is going to destroy the program. And of course, there's a lot of back and forth on this. And if you're not up to date, right now, WNBA rules say that players are eligible to be selected in the WNBA draft upon graduating from college, 3 months of doing so, or in the calendar year that they turn 22. Auriemma had a lot to say about this on his ESPN radio appearance.
If you want to kill it, then let the kids leave after freshman year, which is Like on the men's side, it's become transactional. Okay, everybody's a free agent. Everybody's a mercenary. It's not the kids' fault. What helped the women's game grow is the people in Iowa got to grow up with Caitlin Clark. The people in Connecticut got to grow up with all my great players. There's something to be said for that.
Where is he wrong, Senior?
I understand what he's saying, but where I disagree is I don't think there's going to be this unbelievable trend for freshmen to leave for the WNBA for a couple of reasons. And first, I'd like to ask him to be very truthful about it. He's had some of the greatest college players of all time, right? I mean, you could just list them. I'd like to ask him, would any of them left after their freshman year? Were any of them good enough to go after their, maybe it had been good enough, but would they have left? And now let's add in, Jason, it takes time. You don't get handed NIL deals and even deals outside of NIL like Caitlin Clark got after your freshman year. So, and we all know about the salaries in the WNBA. Caitlin Clark's making $76,000, but we keep talking about the off-court money she's going to make. Well, freshmen aren't going to make that in the WNBA coming out 1 year from college into the WNBA. They're going to make that NIL money in college before they go to the WNBA. So I don't think all of a sudden you're going to get, and it's not just after 1 year, Jason. They could then leave after 2 years or after 3 years after they build something up. So from that point, and Gino said, I get it. You could see a player leaving after a couple of years, 2-3 years, and not get to grow with them. But overall, I don't think there's going to be this, oh my God, wait till you see the amount of players that leave now after their freshman year to hit the WNBA. I don't think that's going to happen.
No, and I'm not sure the WNBA would even want to change the rules because, frankly, they love the fact that women's college basketball does the heavy lifting of making the stars. Like the WNBA doesn't want to have to be in the star manufacturing business. They want to inherit stars and make the most of them. I get all of that. I don't disagree with the concept of what Coach is saying. The next time a coach comes out and says change is good will be the first time a coach says it. And I'm so tired of every single coach preaching the death of college sports. Like the asinine part about this is look at the numbers, look at the TV number. And I'm not just talking about women's college basketball. Let's include college football in this conversation because everybody tells me college football is dying. TV numbers, record highs, right? Revenue, record highs. Coaching salaries, record highs. Like everybody's making more money while everybody's watching more. College basketball across the board, men's and women's, set huge landmark numbers this year. We're looking at an NIL transfer portal world, and every single time I turn around, coaches are saying, well, this is the death of the sport. It's not the college basketball I know. It's not the college football I know. I don't care because it's good. And because guess what? At the end of the day, people are flocking to watch it. And I think on shows like this, we're talking in the offseason more about college sports than ever because of these systems that have been created. So I get what Gino's saying, but I'll also counter all of it and say, man, the level of attention that's happening right now, I have yet to see change in college sports that didn't turn out so far to be good. And everybody keeps telling me it won't. I don't buy it.
There has been big time change, and it has done nothing to damage the sport. Nothing. And you're right. The ones that complain the most are the coaches because it does affect them. It affects the way their job and what they have to do. But you know what? Tough. You're getting paid a lot of money. And oh, by the way, you're getting paid a lot of money. And a year later, you can go somewhere else and get paid a lot more money if you want and get out of your contract. So, and normally somebody else is going to pick up the tab for that. So I'm with you. Will it be different? Yes. Will you figure out a way to deal with it? That's what you better do. It's survive or don't, or move on. So I do not think, just like most of the changes that have gone on, Jason, I do not think this is going to be the death of college basketball, of college sports. It's going to be different, and it still needs some guardrails, but it's still going to be around and viewed a long time.
And two things can be true. A coach like Saban can walk away because he doesn't want to deal with it, and he's got hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank. That's right for him. That doesn't mean the sport's about to die because of it. All right, we'll keep breaking it down, obviously, but it's Swifty Day. We've got all the Swift action you can handle next.
GoJo and Golic to talk more about Taylor Swift because, duh, half of the world didn't sleep last night. They pulled an all-nighter because she finally released her 11th studio album at midnight. And then at 2 a.m., she released another album of 15 additional songs named The Tortured Poets Department, the Anthology. More drama, though. People actually leaked the tracks on social media, with some saying they came from a Google Drive link containing the whole 17-song list, so some Swifties listened. Others said that was shunned upon. They waited till midnight. Again, total respect to T Swift. Clearly, she has a massive fan base. I would probably say half of the world, maybe even more so. Senior, I have to ask you, though, what would you pull an all-nighter for at this point? Would it be any album or anything? Because I just don't think I would for anything.
I have said, outside of watching something of my kids or my family, there is nothing, no sporting event, no concert I would stand in line for. Nothing. I don't value it that enough. And this takes nothing away. I think Taylor Swift is an unbelievable, forgetting talent, just overall. I mean, she writes songs, sings. I mean, the show that she puts on, she is incredible, absolutely incredible. I don't know her. Seems like a good person. I love what's going on with her and Travis. Travis, I do know. I think that's a cool thing, but there isn't anything, and you don't have to anymore. I mean, Jason, these young kids, these young whippersnappers. I mean, make them stand in line at a record store, right? I mean, remember the day when you would stay out all night? I never did, but I know you. I'm sure you did. You were a music guy. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, Jason played.
It was not just for records, right? Like Mike. I mean, when Tower, like I said earlier, Tower Records was my thing, right? Like, so you would go line up at Tower Records the night before a record came out because you want to get it first thing in the morning, which meant I was skipping school. Sorry, I skipped a lot of school. Still did fine. But then like concerts too, Mike. Like, I mean, now I know everybody complains about Ticketmaster. I get it. I get the problems and the situations. I remember camping out 3-4 days in advance of like, all right, I'm sleeping in this sleeping bag as I hit my microphone. I'm sleeping in this sleeping bag because I want to make sure that I have a shot at getting, because back then you couldn't even rely on the phones to get you through. So like you had to buy tickets at the box office, right? Like, and that was a real thing, but that was part of the whole vibe of it. So yeah, I mean, there were tons of acts when I was a kid, but I do think you reach like a life point where, I don't know, like short of, if the Raiders won a Super Bowl, I'd pull an all-nighter because I would be on one for like 3 days. I'd have to put a bunch of stuff in my body and we would just figure out how to make it for 3 straight days. Like that would happen. But short of that, I can't imagine anything that I would actually stay up all night for.
Did you ever, for an album or a concert, did you ever when you were growing up?
Oh yeah, Bon Jovi. I was an '80s rock kid, right? Like, so I mentioned like "Use Your Illusion." When that came out for Guns N' Roses, I remember sitting outside the record store. I remember Bon Jovi tickets in DC, in the DC area at the time. I camped out for those. That was a big deal. I didn't camp out for, but I went to high school with one of the guys in NSYNC, and I remember seeing the people that just were absolutely just outside of those stadiums for days waiting to get into it, right? Like it was a much different. So I've been around that a lot in my life. It's just a different, I don't know, there's a different joy. I will say this, Claudia mentioned at the beginning, people leaked a bunch of these tracks. That is such an egregious, terrible, like I know I'm going to get on my high horse for a minute, but the amount of work that goes in to making a record, and the amount of vulnerability that comes into putting your music out, knowing in a modern social media world that somebody's going to have something to say about every ounce of it, the amount of time you spend into it and the amount of care you put into it. If you talk to most musicians, they'll tell you that release day is full of angst, no matter who they are, because you've worked forever to put this project out and you want your name on it. If somebody is out there leaking that stuff in advance, shame on them, because not only are they taking away the control that the artist has in their own art, they're putting the artist in an anxiety situation they should never have to suffer over music that they're making to give the world. If you steal that from an artist, man, you are a type of low that does not deserve to listen to the music that you've leaked.
Would artists ever have somebody leak their own music to make it like a bigger story? To put more attention
probably.
on it?
No, probably. Like the secret release, I could see that. Like I could see some people doing that. Look, there are some people that are dumb for promo. Yeah.
Not all 17 songs though. That This was not T Swift's doing. I see what you're saying, Senior. But yeah, this
No,
was.
no,
I
no.
also don't
Listen,
think
she does.
T Swift doesn't need to do any tricks. Like all she needs to do is say like, release
She just
the
has to
record, and then
breathe.
she can go to the coffee shop. Yeah.
She literally just has to breathe.
Yeah.
And I do have to say, I totally understand the experience of it all. I always say that I wish I was born a far time ago. Not saying you guys were born that long ago, but you know what I mean.
No, that's exactly what you were saying. I mean,
Whatever.
we heard that.
Yeah, whatever.
Well, kind
Age shamer.
of.
Go
because
ahead.
that was more of an experience. You could get snacks and not have to be on your phone finding the leaked music and hang out with your friends. I totally understand that. I would do that for Taylor Swift 10 times over. I'd probably do it for somebody I don't even like.
Well,
Wait,
but now
Claudia, what was your first concert?
My first concert was Kenny Chesney when I was way young. Taking Back Sunday, which I love that kind of music too. I'm like an emo boy band kind of girl, and that's probably why I don't
just
like Taylor
think the answer to what was your first concert is getting less and less cool. It really is. Like that. My first concert
cool.
was Bon Jovi's Skid Row. Like that. I know that's not all that cool. Mike, what was your first concert?
You know what? I honestly don't remember. I would say, if I had to guess, it was probably when I was a lifeguard, where I grew up, and we would all go out together. We'd go to Blossom Music Center, and I'm going to say it was the Beach Boys.
Oh, that's
way back
cool.
when it was the Beach Boys.
See,
That's
there was a whole era where it was like the Beatles, the Beach Boys, the Rolling Stones, like all of these timeless, like, I don't know. I just think that in 30 years, if the answer is BTS, like nobody's going to be like, oh, wow, you saw BTS?
Yeah. I got two things. First, Claudia, you know what Jason and I don't want to hear? Oh, I went to Kenny Chesney, when I was young. You're 7?
Yeah.
You're young, all right?
No, I was like
so
a
stop
child.
with the young.
I feel like your first
Okay, all
concert
right.
experience is when you can go and
Right.
drink a
I may
beer
have
and
been, look,
enjoy the music.
no,
Appreciate
I'm
it.
just
Right.
saying, I may have been either at that show or on that bill with some act. Like I'm just saying, that's the age difference. Like there's a
Exactly
pretty
right.
good chance if it was 20 years ago, there's a pretty good chance that I was either there or had been there the day. Like I mean, yes, that's a what? Yeah.
Unbeknownst to you, Claudia, you were clapping for Jason Fitz at that point. By the way, Jason, when you said you would cut school, you went to Juilliard. I mean, an incredible school for music with some incredible stars. Is that the school you cut? Is that what you were cutting?
No. I didn't cut Juilliard for Bon Jovi tickets. That would have got me in a lot of time. No, that was the public portion of school that I was cut. Like I was a very dedicated student at Juilliard. I was not a very dedicated student in classes. Although my grades were fine. I just, everybody calm down. I may have not been the most focused student, to the surprise of no one when you listen to me try and read. That doesn't surprise anybody.
They say that the most creative people, though, aren't. It's not necessarily that they're good in class. So I love that. That's crazy. You went to Juilliard. That's amazing. Wow.
But I always excuse this, and this is where I think sometimes I love working with former athletes, because I knew what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it, and who I wanted to be when I was 4 years old. Like there was never a question. Like by the time I was 8, I knew I wanted to be a violinist. There was never a question. Every turn in my life where I had to make a decision between, going out and doing this or staying home and practice, I made that decision. And when I got to a certain point in life, some things like, I don't know, chemistry and like calculus, my calculus teacher flat out looked at me and was like, man, you're a great musician and you are not good at this. So just don't do this. Right. Like that's fair though. Like I was good at one thing, and that one thing I was really good at. That's why I like working with athletes, because I think we all share that.
So yeah, I mean, you're just like some of the greatest athletes in the world. And listen, in all honesty, you went to Juilliard for the violin. I mean, but I guess I'm gonna let you close this out by saying, is it weird that you were at this classical violin at Juilliard but you're known as the fiddle player? Does that make you feel weird from the classical violin to the fiddle player from the band Perry?
I remember when we played the American Music Awards, and somebody afterwards said to my mom, was like, you must be so proud. And my mom was like, why would I be proud of that music? Yeah, no, there's 100%. Like I grew up a classical kid. There was never going to be, there was never a spot where it was like, man, playing the fiddle was not what anyone had in mind for us. All right, we'll get back to sports. Everybody relax. The draft is a week away. We're going to break down some of the best of the beast next.
to get back to sports. The NFL draft is a week away. And now we have NFL analyst Dave Brugler's The Beast, which, if you didn't know, it is the most comprehensive draft guide out there. Over 400 scouting reports, NFL verified testing for almost 2,000 prospects. Dave joined DKN's Ross Tucker to talk all things NFL draft, and he talked about something we could see for the first time in draft history next week.
We've never seen 20 offensive players drafted in the first round. This year, there's a good chance we hit that number. In my 7-round mock that just came out this week on The Athletic, I had 21 offensive players in there, 11 defense. And it starts at the top with these quarterbacks. We also might see the first time we've ever seen quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's never happened before. And 1, 2, 3's only happened a few times. But there's a chance we could get that fourth one if the Cardinals trade out and that fourth quarterback, whether it's J.J. McCarthy or whoever does not go 2 or 3, ends up being that fourth pick. And then where's the first defensive player come off the board? We've never seen the first 8 picks be all offense before. 57 years in the Super Bowl era, we've had 57 drafts, never seen offense go 1 through 8. We might see it this year.
Dane's full conversation with Ross drops Monday, and you can check out all of the episodes of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast right here on DraftKings Network, Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. Now, this is, like I said, the most comprehensive draft breakdown. There's so much we could get into. I started reading a little bit of it. I'm sure you guys have as well. Fitz, anything that really sticks out to you? I know he just talked about the 20 offensive players in the first round. Is it that or something else you want to break down?
I think it's a different part of the offensive players that stood out to me because, look, there are certain things. I've covered the draft for 6 years for ESPN digitally. This year I'll cover it for Yahoo. We're doing some really cool draft stuff I'm really proud of. Every year when I cover it, the one thing that I stress to everybody, Mike, is that it's important to know what you know and know what you don't know. And most of us as a society have a hard time breaking down offensive linemen. And the fact is, not only do most of us have a hard time breaking down offensive linemen, most fans don't care about offensive linemen as a rule. Right. Here's what I found through the Beast that really stood out to me, though. I don't believe in the NFL right now that there are 32 starting caliber left and right tackles in the NFL. That's 64 tackles. I don't believe that there are 64 capable starting caliber tackles in the NFL right now. And we look at it every year at the draft and we say, oh, sexy wide receiver, need a quarterback. This year is going to have a massive run on offensive linemen in the first round. And I think it's a really important run. Like whether you value Joe Alt or whether you value Olu Fashanu or any of these guys, like you start talking about 5 or 6 of the offensive linemen, I would tell everybody before you freak out and say, oh my God, we drafted a lineman, just go read the Beast and get some of the breakdowns on them. Look to the fat guys on Twitter that you trust that can break these guys down because, Mike, I think it's the toughest position for most analysts that didn't play to break down. Oh. And I think in this year's draft, it's a home run for a lot of these teams.
This is my son Mike's, the GoJo portion of this program. This will be one of his favorite drafts. Again, Jason Fitz sitting in for my son Mike, who was at Chris Long's golf tournament in Charlottesville, Virginia, to raise some money for Water Boys, an incredible thing that Chris Long has going to get water to needy places in Africa, fresh water. It's a great foundation that he does. And speaking of old linemen, Jason Kelsey is there, and I have a really interesting tidbit of an auction item and what it went for from that last night. Jason Kelsey going to be a Hall of Famer as an offensive lineman, and you're right, Jason. This is, without question, I love talking line play, O-line, D-line play, but without question, for most people, I think it is one of the toughest positions to break down, given what your scheme is in college. A lot of the way the college game has gone, a lot of it doesn't transfer over to the NFL, and guys have to change up what they do. What's the scheme you're running in the NFL? How does that player fit it by his size, by his strengths, on what he does? Some can come in, early picks that can really, handle everything. But you're right. This is an O-line draft that is going to be one of the biggest and deepest ever. And to the point of the meaning of it, go way back to when Zach Martin, who is going to be a walk-in Hall of Famer from the Dallas Cowboys. Remember that draft? What was it, 16 or 19? Jerry Jones wanted Johnny Manziel. and got talked out of taking Johnny Manziel, the quarterback, to take an offensive lineman, a tackle from Notre Dame, who was going to become a guard in the NFL, and all that did was produce one of the greatest guards of all time. So it is a monster thing, because whenever you talk about quarterbacks, yeah, you talk about who they're going to throw to, but you damn well better talk about who's going to protect them. You look at like the Jets right now. What's the biggest thing they need to do is protect Aaron Rodgers. That's why they went out and got a bunch of old linemen in free agency. And who knows, they may draft another one. Maybe they'll take Brock Bowers. We'll see. But may take another old lineman. It is a monster position. The athletic ability, Jason, I would say, of the linemen coming out now is incredible. The best athletic lineman I ever saw when I played was Bruce Matthews, who could play tackle, guard, center. He's long snap for punts back when that wasn't a long snapper specialty. He ran our running test in the beginning of each year. He ran it with the DBs, and he's an offensive lineman. You just don't see that, but you see it more today. You see how athletic these guys are and their ability to be versatile and move around. But I'm with you. It's a very, very hard position to break down. So when your team, and the way it's looking, or a decent percentage of your teams are going to take old linemen in the first round, understand the value of that and be happy.
I think value too. Like I think this year in the draft, it's a good time for every fan base to stop caring about what you've ever learned about positional value. Because look at what we've seen monetarily in free agency. A top-level guard in this year's free agency class would pull in $100 million. A top-level defensive tackle is going to pull in $110 million. So some of these positions that for years we've been like, oh, well, you can get a guard in the third round. Can you? Like, here's what you need to get in the first round. I want to be Captain Obvious for a minute, but I feel like this needs to be said. What you need to get in the first round for every single team is an impact starter that will be on your team through 2 contracts. Like, I don't care anymore what position that is it, because realistically, if you land a draft pick, you're going to have to pay them $100 million plus, right? If you want to get into free agency, you're going to have to pay $100 million plus. So positions we've devalued, like I said, interior offensive line, even tight end. Sometimes they say, well, you can't take a Brock Bowers that high. Okay, look at the final 4 teams standing last year. You had Laporta, you had Kittle, you had Kelsey. Like, impact tight ends make a difference. So I think everybody sits here and says, well, this is what I'm used to hearing we're supposed to draft. In the new economics of the way the new NFL is built, I don't think any of that matters. What you got to get is somebody you know is going to start for your team and get all the way through that rookie contract and get another contract. That's a successful draft pick at this point. Doesn't really, I don't care anymore what the position is.
I agree. The all of a sudden, Mike and I were talking about there had been a little bit of backlash coming toward Brock Bowers, that he's not like a true tight end. And my answer to that is, so what? So what? Look at the matchup problem he is going to be in the slot or at an H-back position or out wide at like a wide receiver. You know, and you mentioned it. Look at what rookie, even, you know, you mentioned the tight ends in the Final Four, but how about what rookie tight ends? And Dalton Kincaid got a shot when Knox got hurt in Buffalo, played well. Laporta was incredible. They finally started going a little bit more to your guy and my Notre Dame guy, Michael Mayer, with the Raiders, and I'm sure they'll start using him a little bit more. So I think he'll be a monster pick early on. I don't know if he'll be in the top 7. This was another interesting note. There have been 57 NFL drafts. Only once have we seen only offensive players drafted in the first 7 picks. That was in 2021. And we may see that again. We've talked about the quarterbacks going early. Then you got Marvin Harrison. You have Malik Neighbors. You got Rome Odunze. You got Joe Alt as all names up there where the first defender that shows up, let's look at that side a little bit, Jason, is Dallas Turner, the edge rusher from Bama. And I get it. I think he's the best edge rusher in this group. You start looking at a couple of edge guys like he or Jared Verse. Then you start looking at some cornerbacks. The D tackle Murphy from Texas as well, but it is more far and few between. But I think it all does start with Turner, the edge rusher from the Bama, maybe going to Atlanta at 8.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for Atlanta. Also, you mentioned the corners. It's sort of, I'll go back to flavors of ice cream, like Mitchell and the corner out of Toledo, and then Arnold out of Bama. Like, you've got a couple of corners that I think people believe are just sort of day one step in, shut down guys. And it becomes sort of a philosophy question, right? And I think this is interesting. Mike, I'll get your thoughts on this, because somebody said to me last week in just looking at what the Falcons could do, right? We all presume they're going to go edge rusher because they need help at edge rusher. But think about this. The edge rushers that come into the league year one traditionally make some impact. Year two, sort of the breakthrough year for them. A corner can come in year one and make immediate impact. So if you're Atlanta, who feels like they're sort of in a win now mode, given the fact that they put all that money into Kirk Cousins and the weapons they have on offense, do you consider sort of shocking the world and doing work on the defensive side of the ball with the corner that can come in and make an immediate impact and let that save your pass rush instead of vice versa?
Yeah, we've seen some corners come in. The couple of positions that I think have changed a little bit over the last couple of years. Well, one has been the versatility of the safety position. They have to be all-encompassing, deep cover, linebacker, and up at the line. But it's been the cornerbacks' ability. Last year we had a group of cornerbacks come in, some doing really well, getting hurt, unfortunately. Wide receivers has been a position that normally you don't come in and play great right away, but they have started to do that. Where there is some great value, I think, in this year's draft could be the running back position. You're not going to get a first rounder like we had two last year, but look what Bijan Robinson did. Jameer Gibbs, he had the two-headed monster they had in the backfield in Detroit. Breece Hall, the year before that, a young running back. But those two guys last year as first rounders. The top-rated guy is Jonathan Brooks out of Texas. And he's not going to go till probably the second round. You have a bunch of guys listed then, including the Blake Corums of the world from Michigan, Audric Estime from Notre Dame, who I think is going to do really well. But these guys now, you get them second, third, fourth round. Unfortunately, if they come in and do well, it's going to continue to hurt that value of the running back position, saying, look at these guys can come in not being first rounders and get the job done. So we'll see. We still have a little less than a week before the draft. Let's lock in a little bit, Jason, on your team. For those that don't know, Jason is a Raiders fan, got his Raiders gear on right now, got his Max Crosby jersey hanging up behind him, got his Raider t-shirt on. And Claudia, leave it to Gardner Minshew to show up at the offseason program and bring a smile to everybody's face.
Yes, he was made for Vegas. Now teammates with a guy that was trying to take him down just a season ago in rusher Max Crosby. On the sidelines last season when they faced the Colts, it was heard that Minshew was saying, dude, Max Crosby is so damn angry. He just keeps calling everybody a little ass boy. So when Minshew got to the team facility Monday for the first day of the offseason program, he wore this shirt. And if you can't see it, I will describe. It's a black long sleeve Nike shirt that simply says "Lil Ass Boy" on it, which is amazing. All jokes aside, though, Fitz, I didn't realize this was your squad. Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, that is your quarterback room. They have the number 13 overall pick. How you feeling about this one?
Okay, first and foremost, I text Max yesterday, humble brag, and told him I'm going to need one of those Little Ass Boy shirts. That's going to happen. I need one of them. If there's never been a better shirt for me personally at 5'9", 170 than a Little Ass Boy shirt. All right. So, but that being said, I think the Raiders are in the same position that the Broncos and Vikings are in. You can want all day long. Doesn't mean that you control your own destiny. And the problem is for the Raiders, they want a quarterback. And nobody inside the organization, nobody around the organization, nobody reporting on the organization has hidden that. The Raiders want a quarterback. And everybody seems to think that they covet Jaden Daniels, which makes sense, not only because he's great, but because he has ties to Antonio Pierce, the head coach, all the way back to Arizona State. They've known each other a long time. They're very close. This makes sense. Look, people in hell want ice water too. Just because you want Jaden Daniels doesn't mean you can get him. I firmly believe, as much as we talked about trade scenarios earlier, I don't think that there's any package that's going to end up moving out of 1, 2, or 3. I just think the Patriots are going to do the smart thing here, stay where they are, and take the quarterback of the future. So 1, 2, and 3 are done. So now the question becomes, who is the fourth quarterback left on the board? And do you even have the ammunition to trade up for him? The Vikings can offer 11 and 23 this year, plus future first rounders. I think they have more ammunition than anyone's going to have. So the Raiders get stuck at 13. And this is where it gets interesting, because I do believe that Michael Penix Jr. is a great fit. I don't believe that I don't believe Michael Penix Jr. at 13 is a great spot for him. But Mike, you tell me what you think. I also, I'm safe. I'm not a guy that likes to risk things. So what's the sense? Like, okay, I'm going to trade down and take Michael Penix Jr. So you presume that you're trading down and nobody else gets in front of you. Nobody else makes any moves, that Seattle doesn't shock the world and take a quarterback. Like, you can control your own destiny at 13. If you like Michael Penix Jr. and you think he can be the quarterback of the future, you can control your own destiny, make life simple, and simply take him. Or you can either trade down and hope he's there later, or you can take best player and then try and trade back in. If you genuinely believe that Penix is your guy, I don't think you need to mess around. I know 13's too high, but who cares? You can't control the variables.
That was the talk again when I talked about Tannehill in Miami. We all thought 7 was too high, but that was their grade, though it could be a reach. And that's what you're talking about here, because you sit there and look at some of the projections at 13, to Quinyon Mitchell, the cornerback from Toledo, considered, between he and Arnold from Alabama, the two best corners. J.C. Latham, we're talking about a tackle from Alabama, possibly being the pick there as well. The happiest person on the team right now is probably Max Crosby, because they gave Christian Wilkins that big deal. So finally, he's got a running mate on the D-line. But, this is where it's risk and reward, though, for you, because it is, do you get greedy? Do you say, yeah, Penix at 13? Because, as I said, I love Penix. I think he could end up being the best quarterback in this draft. But do you take that chance to say, you know what? Because I agree. I don't think they have what Minnesota has, 13 and 44 this year as far as first and second round, what to give up to move up of what they'd want to package. But do you trade back and take the chance? That would be the thing, is do you trade back, pick up some assets, and get the quarterback that you want? I got to believe that's something, if they're truly in on Penix, because I agree with you. Either you just say, you know what, we're not going to tempt fate. We're just going to take them. We're going to hear probably the criticism, that was too high. You could have got him later, but it's very easy to say you could have got him later, right? When you say, yeah, we're going to drop down more, then somebody else may jump up in front of you and grab him before you.
Look, this is simple for me. If I today was the GM of the Raiders, I would take the best corner or offensive lineman that's on the board. Whichever person rocks my board at 13, that's what I would do. And then I'd see where the draft is going and see if there's a way to move back up if I believe in Penix, but I'm not 1,000% sure. If I look at Michael Penix Jr. and I say, this is a guy that I think can compete year in and year out with Patrick Mahomes, and I take him at 13, no matter what anybody else thinks. The one thing I'll add here, though, is Tom Telesco is the new GM, right? And we watched him work it with the Chargers. What do the Chargers do every year I've covered the draft? Every year you're sitting there and you're saying, well, how the hell is that guy available? And then Telesco just takes him. The Chargers get benefit of the doubt every year because their roster was really good. Now, we can question some of the contracts and the health and all these things, how they got to where they are. But Mike, every year we're watching the draft, you're like, all the Chargers did was take Derwin James because he happened to be sitting there. So, there's a part of me that just thinks if we look at Telesco and the way that he's operated in the past, there's no reason to think that at 13, he's not going to look at it and say, well, team has a glaring need on the offensive line, has a glaring need in the secondary. Let's address that with the best player on our board. And then we'll just figure out the Penix or Bo Nix thing as it unfolds later in the draft. I think, Mike, that makes sense.
If they were not to grab that quarterback at 13, if they waited till a second or third round, if they didn't get one of the top one, go through the top 4 and then a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix, if they didn't do that, would you think that is they missed the boat on that? And if so, who would be your starter? Would you Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, completely open competition? How would you go about it?
It's an open competition. They want Aiden to win the job in that situation. They hope Aiden wins the job. Gardner's shown that he's willing to be in a situation where he mentors too. So I think you go in open competition. Is it missing the boat? No. Because the one thing I always say is that you've got to look at some point at roster construction, in my mind, like going out on eBay and deciding what you're going to buy. When you're doing that, you have to have a hard line in the sand on the price. And it might make you uncomfortable sometimes, but you got to be willing to walk away. The one thing you can't do as an NFL team anymore, in my mind, you can't overdraft just because you're worried about something. You got to let the board come to you, and you got to take the best player available. I believe that they'll do that. So if they don't take a quarterback, I just got to trust that either Aiden O'Connell develops or something happens next year that I need to buy more bottles of bourbon. We'll see where it goes. As we continue to break down the NBA action, we'll do that next on the show.
series prices over the DraftKings Sportsbook. If you take a look, we do have some decently heavy favorites like the Cavs laying 195. Down at the bottom of the board, the Nuggets minus 310, not too much surprise. And then I guess actually rest of the way, we're getting closer to even money. So that brings us to our Cash It or Trash It segment presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned to hear all that DraftKings has to offer. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Agent eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. Senior, which underdog are you cashing?
Well, I mean, God, some are getting so close to pick'ems on this. How much are the Pacers? Where is that?
Pacers, where are they? Oh, Pacers minus 120. So Bucks are even money. So Pacers are the slight favorite now.
I would probably, I had said earlier, I think either the Knicks or the Bucks or both are going to lose, but in picking one here, I'll go with the Pacers as my underdog. Oh, no, they're not.
Pacers are the favorite. Yeah, Pacers are favored now.
Oh, God, so I can't even do that.
So you agree with the money movement? You agree with the Bucks then?
Yeah,
I mean, that's a pretty substantial shift.
I do.
Right, we're at that spot with the Pacers.
I just think Giannis with the calf, we don't know how he's going to be when he comes back. That team has not adjusted well to Doc Rivers. So I agree with that. So I guess I'd have to go with the other one with the 76ers, even though, man, I didn't like. They got the win over the Heat, and really it was because of Nick Batum. I mean, what he did. Now, Embiid was a force when he needed to be, but as we talked about earlier, Jason, he looked winded in that one, grabbed at the knee brace a bunch. So I think that's going to be a tougher series than I even thought with the Knicks. I probably lean to the Knicks in that, but for the sake of this, I'm going to take the 76ers.
The 76ers conversation right now reminds me of 80s wrestling, like when Hulk Hogan was in a sleeper hold and he had his hand up and it's like down for one, down for two, and then on three, he starts shaking. Like, we keep thinking that this is going to be Embiid's shake moment. He's going to shake up and the arena is going to go crazy and suddenly, bam. I think we just got to remember this is a best-of-7 series for somebody that's not in best-of-7 series shape. He's not necessarily ready for this best-of-7 series moment. I know I love the idea of the 76ers taking down the Knicks more than I like the actual probability of the 76ers taking down the Knicks. So I'm going to stay away from that one. And by the way, I think the fact that the Bucks are now an underdog I don't want to get too hyperbole here, but man, if the Bucks lose in the first round again, you got to look around and think, man, what's Giannis going to be thinking? What's the future of the Bucks? Like, for a team that a couple of years ago we were thinking, oh, this is about to be sunshine and roses in Milwaukee for the next decade. All of a sudden, the Dame thing didn't work out the way they wanted the Dame thing to work out. So I don't know. If I'm just going to, again, I don't like most of these underdogs if I'm looking across the board. So, I think because I don't like the Clippers, I don't trust the Clippers. You never know when James Harden's going to forget how to basketball. I was working with Danny Green over at Yahoo for the NCAA tournament. I asked him specifically about Harden, and I was like, hey, is it real or is it just bad luck? And he's like, oh, no, like 100%, when you take on Harden at certain moments that it just gets to him. So all you got to do is let it get to him. So like, I don't want to bank on that. If I'm going to pick one underdog on this list, I like to make money. So if I'm going to risk something, I'm going to risk it on Orlando to shock the world and take down Cleveland. Now that's plus good money out of that thing. Like, if I'm going to just throw some pizza cash at it, why not take a Magic team that's far ahead? Look, I know that they've got no offense. You know that they've got no offense, but playoff basketball is about defense, baby. So why not? Like, you got Banchero coming out there with the Rookie of the Year campaign. You got all sorts of defense coming from Orlando. They shocked the world. They slowed down the cap. I don't really believe this happens, but if I'm going to have to take one upset, I'll take the extra money, the extra cash bag.
I love that. I'm all about the plus money. I do want to mention the opening line of Milwaukee was minus 150. So the odds have shifted drastically. And of course, we know it's with Giannis being banged up. But you make a good point about series prices. This is a little bit of advice. If you do like a heavy favorite like the Nuggets, for example, take a look at the DraftKings other markets. You can go a series spread, right, for them to be up by a certain amount of games in the end. So that's one way to sort of cut down that juice. You can also go game to game. I also want to say, if you have not live bet yet, at least try to understand how the market moves in game. And then once you understand it, and I'm not talking to you guys, I'm talking to viewers. If you're new to live betting, try to understand it. It's a fun time to do it during the playoffs, because when you have these massive favorites, that juice is going to come down. As we've seen often already in just the play-in, A team will come in as a favorite and they'll fall behind early, and then you can even get them at plus money. So I would say if you love the Nuggets, stay away from that series price because you never know what can happen. Either go a series spread or bet them in game. That's just my 2 cents, but I'm with you, Fitz. I like the plus money.
One more quick thing on that, not to interrupt you, but one more quick thing. If you're thinking about live betting on it, which by the way, I think is a lot of fun. Like I think it's a fun way to do this. I just always tell everybody, if you want to live bet and you've never done it before, take the first round of the NBA playoffs and just watch it. Pretend you're doing it. Go out there and look at how the movements move, the lines move, I should say. And then in the second round, try it. Just try it a little bit. And then by the time you get to third round, you can try it a little, like ease your way. That's the easy way to dip your toe, is to actually look at it throughout the course of the game and say, oh, it moved this way, so I would have made or lost this. Like it's an easy way to practice.
That's what I always say. Practice the first few games or first round, and then you'll see how drastically sometimes too. I always talk about it in hockey. You'd be surprised how quickly those odds will shift. In the regular season too, when there's thousands of games, it's just a computer system changing it. We don't have to dive too deeply into live betting, but it is something fun to do. Senior, so we talked about the little bit of value on this board. Is there any team that you really want to see win at the end of this all? I'm just curious. And Fitz, I want to get your final two. We're going to be talking hoops as this whole tournament goes on. But if you had to give one team right now.
Well, I mean, first off, when you said you're not talking to me and Fitz, you're talking to everybody else. No, you're talking to me because I need to be educated on all this stuff. Believe me.
Not Fitz.
So you are helping me. Listen, the matchup that everybody's looking at here is LeBron and Jokic, is the Lakers and Denver. Denver's beaten them 8 straight, to which LeBron says it doesn't matter what happened in the past, it has no bearing on now. And he's right, and that's exactly the way an athlete should be thinking. But Denver's going to win this series. I don't know if it'll be a sweep like it was last year, but I think they're going to win this series. I do think the last two are going to be Boston and Denver. I know, Claudia, all you Celtic fans up there in Boston are just wondering, they're going to be their own worst enemy.
Yeah.
I do think Philadelphia can be, or the Knicks will be the biggest threat to them, in all honesty, but they're the best team, and if they play anywhere near the best, they should get out of it. And in a pretty deep West here, you know, Oklahoma, we're still wondering about Oklahoma City, Minnesota, when you get Karl Anthony Towns back, the Clippers. Kawhi's got the bulky knee. We keep wondering about, is Luka going to get one with Dallas? But I just still trust Denver more than anybody else. I thought they'd have their number 1 seed when we had the three-way tie for a lot of the last part of the season, especially after Karl Anthony Towns went down. But good on, SGA and the Oklahoma City Thunder for getting that number 1 spot. But, Jason, I just can't see it being anybody else but Boston and Oklahoma City. It's like, Boston and Denver. It's almost going all chalk like in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, but I think there's a reason for that. I agree with you on the Celtics. I'll say this. I don't think the Celtics are even going to be challenged in the East. I am a massive believer in the Celtics. Now, this is where Boston fans will always give me the, but we don't do this well. Yeah, but our shooting disappears late. Yeah, but we got to get better on the boards. Like, I get all of that. But I also think that that's coming from scarred Celtics fans that are just anticipating the downfall of Boston. I don't anticipate any of that through the East. I think they're going to look dominant, and we're going to fall too in love with it because, to your point, all of those deficiencies we just mentioned will be glaring if they end up with a matchup against the Nuggets particularly. So in my mind, this ends up being Boston versus Denver. But if I'm Boston, not only am I trying to make quick work of it so I can stay rested and healthy, I am hoping to God that somebody somehow gets rid of Jokic in this process, because that is a matchup nightmare for what the Celtics particularly are bad at to me. So I feel like the Nuggets are going to win this thing. The Nuggets are going to be boring, and everybody's going to remind us yet again that it's not the Lakers. But, man, that's how I see it, Mike.
I just love it when a dad bod wins a championship, right? It gives hope to all of us dad bods out here. Not you, Jason, because you're finally tuned athlete since you've been trying to turn your body around.
About a dad bod? You're over there like you could just like, I don't know why you wear a shirt when you do this show. If I looked like Golic did, I wouldn't wear, like, I'd be out here in a Speedo all day just being like, it's Speedo time with Mike.
Oh, God.
I almost threw up on my mouth. I really did.
No,
don't ever say that.
All right, let's do the hockey next.
like the Arizona Coyotes are no longer. They're going to be the Utah something. What it is, we don't know yet, but we know they will be in Utah next season as a new franchise. The Utah Jazz owners took over Ryan and Ashley Smith of Smith Entertainment for $1.2 billion. So the Coyotes players, draft picks, and hockey operations department will relocate to Utah. Smith said there's a chance the team will play with a temporary name and logo for next season. Really? Come on, get your brains together. Give us something. To preview that and the playoffs and Taylor Swift, of course, we're joined by the one and only Bleacher Report's NHL columnist, Sara Civian. You can also find her content on EP Rinkside and listen to her Too Many Men hockey podcast. Sara, how tired are you?
I'm tired in the best way because it's Taylor Swift release day. And of course, I stayed up last night like we all did, right?
Can I just get a quick reaction? I do want to talk my Bruins, but quick reaction.
Just flawless. I mean, I usually don't like her albums as much as I did on the first listen here. I think sonically she sounds better than she ever has. And you know, she's trained so hard with her Eras tour. So I feel like her breath work, like that just immediately stands out. The lyrics are what they are with her, but the voice, I was blown away.
Okay, that's the breakdown.
Wow, the breakdown there.
Yes, I do love
I'm ready.
that.
I was ready for that.
Well, Sara, you would love this.
You were.
Senior's impressed.
Go ahead.
Yesterday,
yes.
Sara, you would like this. We talked about the tortured fan bases in all of sports. And when it got to the NHL, we said it has to be the Maple Leafs. There's really no other team that comes to mind. Well, Bruins fan here wants to know, please tell me, will the Leafs remain tortured in this first round?
Oh my goodness. We just can't overthink it. Yes, they are going to go to game 7 and the Bruins are going to win again, but it's for different reasons this time. I mean, now the monkey's off the back with the Leafs, but all they did was get to round 2. And now the Bruins have more pressure after not failing to get to round 2 last year, but they still have the best goalie tandem in the league. Meanwhile, the Leafs were embarrassed by them most of the regular season. The Leafs got tougher, but that doesn't matter. They needed better goaltending, and it stinks for them when Austin Matthews has an amazing offensive year after year, and it just feels like they don't improve on defense, they don't improve in goaltending, and all these things that actually make them a Stanley Cup finalist team.
All right, Sara, I don't care about tortured teams. I care about glorious champions. Because I'm going to be honest with you, Sara. Less than a year ago, I cried like a child as I was in the building for the first ever championship, professional championship game for the NHL, for the Golden Knights, for the Stanley Cup. And I was back there for the parade. Flew out for the parade, was making sure that I was there to see my city throw the parade. No discredit to the Aces. I don't want anybody to get my mentions. But the Golden Knights, Stanley Cup champions, this year, though, has not been easy. And last night they didn't help themselves because now they draw Dallas in the first round of the playoffs. So what has to change for the Golden Knights to go on a run like they did last year?
I know. I mean, who do you want, though? Oilers or Dallas? There's no really good answer there. I feel like anyway, I digress. What they need is more cohesiveness. They make all these changes. Noah Hannafin has been awesome on defense for them. He fits right in with Bruce Cassidy's defense first mindset. But then I love that they go out and acquire all these superstars, but they just have to make sure they're all acquainted with each other and they're all up to snuff and up to speed with the system. So I think it's just kind of playing the long game.
So for you, biggest storylines going, we just talked about the storylines basically in the NBA playoffs. So for the NHL playoffs, biggest storylines to you that we need to keep an eye on?
I mean, definitely Leafs Bruins, especially with the Bruins failing to make the second round last year. I think it's just the amount of parity in the league. You've got the West is a gauntlet. The Avalanche Jets is going to be the best games in the first round, in my opinion. I feel like that could be the Stanley Cup final in itself. So whoever comes out of that, you're going to want to watch. There's so many. You ask yourself again, how important is having the best goaltender? That used to be everything in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now other teams are proving they can make it far with different ways. If it's the best defense of all time or whatever, you kind of have to have it all, but you don't have to have the best goalie in the world anymore. So that's kind of a little storyline I'm looking for.
You don't have to have the best, but it helps to have a hot goalie, right?
Yes.
And we all know that. So is there somebody that you're looking at right now saying, man, this team could go on a run just because their guy could get really hot?
Call me insane. The Capitals with Charlie Lindgren. It's his first NHL playoffs, and he has single-handedly kept this team alive when they were actively trying to die. And they figured it out now. Ovi has figured it out. And I know the Rangers won the President's Trophy, and they're on paper, one of the best teams in the league. But I just feel like that smells like an upset to me because of goaltending.
Speaking of goaltending,
can you give me a little bit on the Connor McDavid and what he has done since he got in the league in 2015, 100 assists this year. Kucherov also did that. So you had 2 in a year now, just joining on just 3 others, including Wayne Gretzky, of just his impact and what he has been and the legacy he's creating at such a young age.
Oh, it's insanity in the best way possible. He's the best player in the world and potentially of all time when everything's said and done. I know Gretzky said he might be at the end, and Gretzky's so humble, but you look at this year in particular and the way he started off slow, he was injured, then he comes back and then he's immediately scoring more points per game than anyone. Just the way he turns it on and the different ways he wins and how creative he's had to get with the team around him. I mean, this year, it's I feel like he took a breather and it was the best thing for the team because they could get when you're playing with a player like that, it's you maybe rely on him a little bit too much, but he took a step back and that was probably difficult for him. But I think he had to do that so the rest of the team could realize, hey, I can score 50 goals too. I can play defense and we have to if we want to win the cup. So I feel like just his mind is so on a different level than anybody else in the league.
Yeah, but in fairness, we have 2 of those stars right now in this league because Connor and Austin Matthews are people that are doing really, truly historic, and I hate hyperbole, but these are historic seasons. How important is it that one of those guys goes on a deep run so that the world sort of starts paying attention to 2 transcendent hockey talents?
It's so funny because when you said that, I thought you were going to say Nathan McKinnon. It's this is the best Hart Trophy race we've ever had in NHL history, I think, but it is important, especially when we're looking to grow the game, when the teams are relocating and you're looking for more popularity in the league and you're getting more eyeballs. I mean, views have been great, especially ever since ESPN took back over. So it's important, but I don't know if it's important Austin Matthews goes on a run or the Canadian teams. You know what I mean? I think we need more US, but maybe the Utahs will next year.
Yeah, the Canadian team hasn't won since '93. I'm sure they'd like to get back on top again. Who do you have in the finals?
Oof. Panthers. I think they aren't going away, and they are so deep and so battle tested that if Bobrovsky can just stay Bobrovsky, he's gonna make it to the finals. And I'm gonna go Oilers. I've seen what I needed to see with the rest of the team stepping up. You don't like to see Stuart Skinner get laid out like that in the last game of the regular season. That was a weird decision to put him in net, but I digress. I think they'll be fine, and I think it's going to be Oilers-Panthers.
All right, let's end where we started. The Coyotes going to Utah. 5 applications were sent to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office for the new Utah franchise. The Utah Blizzard, Utah Venom, Utah Fury, Utah HC, and Utah Hockey Club. Do you like any of those? If not, do you have your own? Because I have mine.
I like the Yeti. What's yours? Yours too?
Yeti,
yes,
that's
let's
it.
Go.
That's
we
it.
need more fun.
It's got to be the Yeti. I mean, the greatest name in all of sports right now is the Kraken. I mean, I immediately got a shirt. I love that. So, Jason, got to be Yeti, right?
Yeah, this has got to be the Yeti. I mean, that's the only way that this goes. Sarah, thanks so much for the breakdown. I can't wait to have you back. I won't be here, but we can't wait to have you back for this run. And I hope you're
Thanks,
wrong
Sarah.
and that either Vegas or Nashville wins. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate that. We'll keep breaking it down, obviously. Next up, this, that, and the third. We'll get into it next. Golic and GoJo Golic. I should know the name of the damn show.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. I like the way Fitz said it, though, at the end of the last break, Golic and GoJo. But, Jason, I tried that in the first show, asking Mike why he put his name first. And these kids nowadays, they just, no respect for their elders. But it is GoJo and Golic. Thanks for joining us this morning as we send you off into the weekend with this, that, and the third. Before we get to it, again, Jason Fitz in for my son Mike all day today. Mike is in Charlottesville, Virginia, Chris Long's charity golf tournament. Chris Long, obviously, famous father Howie Long, brother Kyle Long played in the league for a bunch of years, as did Chris. Chris runs a great foundation, Water Boys, getting fresh water to those in need in Africa. I've been doing that for a while. So he has that charity tournament. Jason Kelsey is at the tournament. They were honoring him as he's getting honored in a lot of places. So Jason Fitz at these things, they have live auctions. They auctioned off, remember the Mummers outfit that Jason Kelsey wore when he did the speech for their Super Bowl parade, that incredible speech. I'm sure he was hammered on the Mummers outfit with the hat on. They sold that hat at the auction last night, $17,000 for the Mummers hat. It got by someone bidding. So that's what those things are all about, man. Digging into some pockets, nobody trying to fool anybody. It's there to raise money, and they raised some money for that. So that was a very, very cool thing. I'm wondering as we get to this, if the Seattle Seahawks players think this is a cool thing. Their new head coach, Mike McDonald, has taken down the basketball hoops at the practice facility. These practice facilities. When I first got to the Oilers in the league, our facility, we actually had a racquetball court that we went and played racquetball in. I don't think anybody plays racquetball anymore. But, some had pool tables, ping pong tables. Here were basketball courts. Mike McDonald, the new coach there, took them down. Not the first to make some changes at a facility, but what do you think of that?
It only hits me because last year when Josh McDaniels was fired by the Raiders, the first thing Antonio Pierce did was put mini hoops back in the locker room. And there were jovial videos posted of everybody talking about how it changed the vibe. And you can't take away the fun the players have every single day. This is the weird part. In the beginning, coaches can do whatever they want. We won't know the impact of this move until we see the results on the field. If the Seahawks win a bunch of games, people will say, well, this is the sort of discipline that he's instilled. If they don't win a bunch of games, then it'll be, he stifled us and we weren't able to be ourselves as young men. So I don't know. This is all part of the proving ground for Mike McDonald. And that's the difficult part of it, Mike.
It's just interesting, the philosophies, right? Because that hoop had been there for 14 years with Pete Carroll. And Pete Carroll used it as the always compete philosophy. So he had a reason to have that up. So much so that in 2022, when they played in Munich against Tampa, he had it shipped overseas. He had the hoop shipped overseas. Remember, you talk about, especially when you travel like that, you want to kind of keep everything the same. Had the hoop with them, and McDonald all of a sudden says, no hoop. So you're right. Every coach has this thing. As I said, we've seen ping pong tables removed, pool tables removed, or in your case with the Raiders, mini hoops put back in. So it all, means nothing until you get on the field and see what the end result is. All I got to say is whatever DeMeco Ryans did in Houston, maybe emulate that because that worked pretty well for a first-time coach. Claudia, what do we got for that?
Just to let you guys know, don't invite Victor Wembanyama to your party because he will not come. He sat down with the Ringers' Kevin O'Connor to talk about why he's all about ball.
I just feel like I'm immune to the things people try to tell me, oh, pay attention to this or watch out, all the bad things
distractions.
Distractions, exactly, like partying, alcohol, drugs, whatever.
But forget hoops in the locker rooms. He leaves the arena and he's just done, period. There's nothing else but ball. What do you think of this one, Senior?
Well, listen, to each his own. I certainly would never criticize somebody because they don't go out and party. We're usually thankful for that because people go out and maybe do it too much. This is just him. This wasn't me. For sure. I went out with the fellas, a lot. We had our Thursday night clubs and things like that, but this is just his way. If it stays that way, fine. Maybe it changes. I don't know, but I'm certainly not going to criticize anybody for that. But it seems more in tune, Jason, with the athlete of today. You know, that they're more in tune with their bodies from the way they work out, the way they train, the way they eat, the way they sleep, the people they have employed, you know, for them personally to help keep their bodies in shape. That I think this is probably less surprising now than back in the day a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Brock Bowers at the Super Bowl with Yahoo, and I asked him before we got on camera, I said, how's your time in Vegas so far? And he said, you know, he literally had taken a private in. He was doing all of his stuff and then taking a private out. He was in town for less than 24 hours. And I was like, not experiencing the city at all. And he looked at me very stoically and said, look, if I do things the right way for the next 10 years in my life, I can experience Vegas later any way I want to. I'm like, there is some mentality of that. And I think back to my first road gig, you know, when I was partying too much, I was playing for Phil Vassar. I was partying too much. And I remember Phil one night was like, look, you spend your whole life trying to get to this point that you live on a tour bus. But then you got to remember, when you live on a tour bus, this is now your job. And when you take it seriously, you can do it forever. I think there is more of a mindset than people realize, especially from young athletes. You know, it's all or nothing for a lot of these guys.
Was that the point? Was there a point, or was that the point when you were like, okay, I need to, well, I don't have to completely stop this part. I need to chill on this part of the partying that you did.
Yeah, 100%. Like that changed my life. I took the break that we had in December. When I came back in January, I dedicated myself to taking better care of myself, and have really ever since, just because people pay the same money for a show in January that they do in November. So if I spend all year partying and I'm not worth a damn by the end of November, then, you know, people didn't get the concert experience they deserve. And I always take doing my job seriously, even though I'm a clown. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's true. You are. But I've always talked about the changes. Like when I first got in the league in the mid 80s, like the supplements weren't really around or that prevalent. Steroids were, but not supplements as much. Workouts where you worked out your entire body. And then we learn over the years, just like you learn that, you know, put on a seatbelt or a helmet when you're riding a bike. You learn that lift to position specific, learn what to eat and when to eat it. And when I think right at the end of my career was when supplements really started coming into play. You kind of learn over time. And I think the athletes of today are really some of the best educated now at how to keep their bodies in peak physical condition, just for that reason. Listen, if I'm serious, just like Brock Bowers said, if I'm serious for the next 10 years, I can have all the fun I want. So it's a good attitude to have. And Victor Wembanyama, the sky is literally the limit for him. All right, Claudia, what's up with the third?
Wemby also can't try to go undercover anywhere because the dude's just taller than buildings, so he would struggle. And I don't have any fun music stories or sports stories. So let's just talk about vultures getting drunk. Because that's what happened in Connecticut. 2 vultures were found. They thought that they were dying, so they took them in. And then, I don't know if they checked for their BAC level or what, but they found out they were dumpster diving and they got drunk. So they took them in, they tucked him in, and I guess they had a hangover the next day. Fitz.
Mike, think about this. You've been in Connecticut. You've spent years in Connecticut. There ain't much to do here. I don't fault the vultures. Like, what else are you doing? Like, especially it's still winter. People are still wearing heavy coats over here, right? Like, you're drinking your way through the winter till you can get to the summer where there's outdoor activities. I think the vultures are onto something here. This is what Connecticut, even the vultures are like, my God, Connecticut, April, I need a drink. Like, that's just what happens.
And they found it in a dumpster, I guess. Dumpster diving, got into something fermented and got intoxicated. That's
how I look every Sunday.
Have you ever, Fitz, have you ever given your dog, I know you've had dogs all your life, and I have as well. You ever give your dog, put a little beer in the dog bowl?
Just a little sip. Yeah, I give it a little sip. Annabelle doesn't like it at all. But Winnie and Sam, the ones I had that I lost to old age, they like every once in a while, Sam would like a little, like she liked a little whiskey. She was a little whiskey fan.
Yeah.
It's like her dad.
There you go. Forget the beer.
Right, there we go.
Go straight to the whiskey. I appreciate that. Well, Jason, I appreciate you for sitting in today for Mike. Mike will be back again on Monday. You'll see Jason on the show plenty. He fills in an awful lot. We appreciate them for them. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Hope you like what you heard. If you did, download, subscribe, rate, review. Give us a good review. Again, if you don't, we don't want to know about it. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. We will see you all Monday.